Wave.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to Wingmen. I am Matthew Tkachuk, and joining me for this very, very special episode, we got a very special guest. This guest is a legendary national play-by-play voice, just achieved the most national broadcast across the NHL, NFL, NBA, and MLB. 1,545 games in total. From New York, Kenny Albert. Kenny, you are the best. I know we talked about this in New York a couple weeks ago, but thank you so much for joining.
Well, Matthew, thanks so much for having me on. It's an honor to join you on the podcast, and congratulations on the baby. Hope you're getting some sleep.
Yeah, it's my new job. Dad job comes number one, and it's been amazing. Honestly, the best thing that's ever happened to me. Wish I was in playoffs so that the baby could come to games, but we'll save that for next year. But speaking of playoffs, you've had some incredible games so far that you've called. You called an incredible one last night in the Pittsburgh-Philly game, overtime for Philly, to clinch, go to the second round. Talk to me about that game and about that series and all these games you've done so far. What series has excited you the most?
Well, I've had the opportunity to be involved in 3 different series during this first round. The way the TV contracts are set up now with TNT and ESPN splitting the playoffs, you don't work a specific series in the first 2 rounds. Gotcha. At least. We're bouncing around. It goes by days of the week more so than series. So I worked game 1 of Colorado, LA, 1 game in the Montreal Tampa Bay series, which is a tremendous atmosphere up in Montreal, and 3 of the games in the Flyers Penguins. So that's the one that I've been heavily involved with, all 3 games in Philadelphia. And last night, it was a tremendous atmosphere. I was there for game 4 when the Flyers had the opportunity to wrap it up, to sweep the Penguins, and obviously, that wasn't the case. Pittsburgh won games 4 and 5, so it gets back to Philly last night. And you could tell, it was tense in the building. You know how it is when the home fans, they won the first 3, then they lost 2. And now all of a sudden, if the Penguins win the game, it goes back to Pittsburgh for game 7. So you could feel it in the building, but it was a great atmosphere and nothing through 3 periods. So going to overtime, and both goaltenders were so good. And as it's getting late in overtime, I was actually thinking about you because I was heading home after the game. It was about a 2-hour drive, and I knew I had to be up at a certain time. And I'm thinking to myself, this could go 2 or 3 overtimes, so it could be a pretty short night. But the Flyers got it done. Cam York scores the overtime goal, and the place went crazy. And for Philadelphia, they hadn't been in the playoffs since the bubble in 2020, and the last time they won a series on home ice was 2012. So it had been a long time, 14 years. And
how was that building? Did it erupt right after? The
building just erupted. And Keith Jones was a partner of mine for many years. And we also, believe it or not, my first job in the minor leagues with the Baltimore Skipjacks, I was doing radio back in the early 1990s. And he joined our team out of college. And I called his first professional goal. So I've known Jonesy forever. And Rick Tocchet was a colleague at TNT. So to see them advance to the second round when those weren't necessarily the expectations this year. They were building and, looking towards the future, and they were 9 points out, 60 games in. So if you're a Flyers fan, you have a lot to be happy about today.
Yeah, for sure. I love when they're good because it makes that city, that rink, that atmosphere. I mean, they are brutal fans, like they in a great way, in the best way possible. Like it's a hard place. I saw a video of Malkin walking into the game yesterday, just getting roasted by fans off the bus. But yeah, I was watching the game knowing we're doing this today and thinking of you as well, because I'm like, is he going to break the record of his longest game he's ever called? Just to put you on the spot, do you know which game that was?
Well, I know you know which game it was. The longest hockey game that I've ever called, and I've done several 3 overtime games, 3 or 4 of them. It was a memorable night in Raleigh, North Carolina, conference final back in 24, and you ended it with, 13 seconds left in the 4th overtime? And
yeah, it was May 2023. That was the year we lost to Vegas.
And I happened to keep all of my prep sheets. So this is the score sheet.
Wow.
So, it's general information on the front, and then the line combinations and other nuggets and stats. And there it is, Tkachuk from Bennett, 1947. So it was May
4th
18th,
overtime.
2023. And one of the funny stories from that broadcast, so I'm up with Eddie Olczyk, and actually Keith Jones was doing the game with us. He was down between the benches. And as the overtimes, we get into the second and third overtime, my statistician who's been with me forever, Ben Bowman, he's giving me notes. This is now the 12th longest overtime game in history. This is now the 8th longest, 6th longest. And Eddie's looking at me. He even said on the air, "Can you stop already?" Because he was tired. The game went close to 2 a.m., so he was giving me a look every time I mentioned a new record, and I think it wound up as the fifth longest overtime game. And we weren't all the way up in the press box that game. We had a booth on the concourse level, like sort of behind the first 25 rows of seats, which for us was great because I felt like, you feel like you're in the crowd. The press box there in Raleigh is pretty high, so at times it could feel like you're kind of in a phone booth removed from the action. But the fact that for that game we were lower, I think it helped us as broadcasters because you're in it. You feel like you're a lot closer to the game than if we had been all the way upstairs. And I remember looking at the phone. It was 1:54 a.m. The game ended.
Oh my God!
During the game, while we're calling it, it's the adrenaline, probably similar to the players. But then once it ends, I was exhausted. I felt like I got hit by a truck. But during the game, that wasn't the case. It was just so exciting. And for me personally, I love being involved in those long games. You want to make history at that point. You want to set a record.
For sure. I remember that. I knew it was going to be a long overtime too. Long overtime, many overtimes. When Lomberg scored in the first overtime, it got called back for like a weird goalie interference, like not one of the ones that you normally see. And for like the next period and a half, no chances, like nothing either way. Just the classic Florida Carolina, get it out, get it in, change.
That game might have set the record for the number of icings. There was
a number of icings, number of hype. Yeah, number of punts. Oh my gosh, number of just quick changes on and off. I remember Barkov took about, I'm sure you have it there, took about 60 draws all against Jordan Staal. So, but one thing I wanted to ask you about that game, since it was the longest one and craziest one and that you've been a part of, we got to compare what we did to keep, the adrenaline, keep mentally sharp. Because I know before the fourth overtime, myself, Montour, Nick Cousins, and Mahura all chugged a Red Bull. Was there any of that going on with you? Was there any snacks that you had? Any pizza late night delivery? Because I know they had to deliver pizzas for us after the first overtime, after the third overtime.
There may have been pizza delivered at one point. I remember we did the Winnipeg St. Louis, that great overtime Game 7 last year that went to double overtime. And I specifically remember pizza being brought up in that game between the overtimes. In your game, I know there were a couple of people sitting in front of us. And like I mentioned, we were right sort of behind the stands, behind the last row of that first concourse. And there were people in front of us handing up some snacks. So they did have some snacks. We had water, and I'm a big Diet Coke guy, so that was probably part of the mix too. But, mentally as a broadcaster, you want to have the perfect call on an overtime goal. You want to remain sharp. So you can't really let the mind wander, and more recently, the overtime games at the Olympics, your game in the quarterfinals, the women's gold medal game, and then your gold medal game all went to overtime. So, those are obviously the most important times for the players and for us as well, because, that call is going to be out there forever.
Well, you just mentioned it, and it's a perfect segue into this for me. But, for myself, my favorite calls are the Cup Finals, the recent one from you. That's one of my favorite goals I ever scored from you, and then the Jack Hughes goal. So me and you are linked together, or you're linked with me with some of my favorite games. So I appreciate it, and they're all the calls just completely you hit it out of the park every single time. But when you are in an overtime game, and I think it's really cool for like the viewers to know, because there's a lot of people that want to be exactly like you, and have your job and have these opportunities, all these cool events. Like, are you prepared for a call? Do you have a line in your head that you want to say? Does it all happen organically and naturally, or do you kind of have a little bit of an idea going in?
That's a great question, and I get it all the time. I'll take you back, first of all, before the overtime calls. You'll probably find it interesting. And I've been so fortunate to call 3 Stanley Cup Finals now on the TV side and 7 or 8 on the radio side, national radio. 2021 was Tampa Bay, Montreal. And then, of course, 2 of the ones you played in, 2023 against Vegas and 2025 against Edmonton. So,
yeah, I guess the one that we were a part of, I didn't like so much.
So we'll leave that one alone.
More good than bad. More good than bad.
These games didn't go to overtime, the cup clinching games, but I'm not one. I don't really believe in scripting out a paragraph, for example, for when a game like that ends. However, I do think that you can't go into it totally blind. So I remember that Tampa Montreal. Tampa had a chance to sweep in game 4. Josh Anderson scored in overtime, so it went to a game 5. So I had a couple of days to think about it. And I just threw some phrases around in my head, and it was their second straight cup. So I came up with lightning strikes twice. So I kind of used that line right at the end as time was winding down. I find out the next day that Chris Cuthbert, the great Canadian broadcaster, used the same line. So we both, without discussing it, we came up with the same thing. It's funny, for yours last year, I was kind of having a hard time during the day, leading up to that game against Edmonton. I just wanted to think of a couple of key words or phrases, and I couldn't. After the second period, the word perfection, Panther perfection, was what I came up with. So when the game ended, that was the line I used when you guys won the cup last year. But the overtime goals, as you know as well as anyone, in hockey, a goal can be scored in so many different ways. So I've called hockey now for 36 years, and if it's a goal scored on a deflection, it could go off the forward stick, skate, the defenseman's body, who knows. So there are several goals during the course of the season for all of us that you might not be sure. And you call the goal, but don't necessarily say a name, and then you delay and see the celebration and who goes to the bench first. There are certain tricks I've learned through the years where if you don't call the name right away, nobody's really keeping a stopwatch on you. We're all our own toughest critics, and you want to get it right. You want to get it right quick. So when those games at the Olympics went to overtime, I was actually happy that it was 3-on-3 because you had less of a chance. Although the Quinn Hughes goal, that was one that certainly could have been deflected, the way that play set up against Sweden in the quarterfinals. But I figured in 3-on-3, it's probably going to be a 2-on-1 or a 3-on-2 and a clean goal. So that's what I was hoping for. And then in the women's gold medal game, the play that Megan Keller made, that
unbelievable
about it as far as, who scored that goal. So that was an easy one. And then the Jack Hughes play, I just think back between the third period and overtime. I mean, even taking it back further, and I know for you guys it was this way times 100, but we just felt the pace was so fast and it was the best of the best. And I've been lucky enough now to work 7 Olympics and men's and women's hockey and several gold medal games. But the big difference, obviously, the last 2 Olympics, it wasn't the NHL players on the men's side. So the level was just, it was such high stakes and so exciting. And to be in that building was incredible. And leading into the overtime, I'm just thinking, I had such a great feeling about the broadcast. I thought, my partners, Eddie Olczyk and Brian Boucher, were just tremendous, and Catherine Tappan handling the interviews and Mike Tirico on the pregame. It just felt so good from a broadcast standpoint. Eddie and Bouch were on top of everything. I remember Bouch mentioning during the game, this is the fastest game I've ever seen from ice level. And then post overtime, you're hoping, for me, I'm hoping it's a clean goal. So it was, and I remember the play going down into the other end prior, and it's McDavid, McKinnon, and Makar on the ice, right? And then Werenski gets the puck, and it's almost like it was moving in slow motion. We were across the way from the benches, and I see Werenski, he makes the move in the neutral zone, and it really did feel like slow motion in a way. And then winds up sliding the puck across to Jack Hughes and then Bedlam. And again, similar to the Stanley Cup calls, I was thinking the day before, I know that whether it was Doc Emmerich in 2010 with the Crosby goal or some of the other overtime goals that were scored, the phrase golden goal was used. So I was kind of thinking about that. So, after calling the actual goal, Jack Hughes wins it. that call, the call of the goal, you don't know. You don't know what it could happen 100 different ways, right? Like I said before, it could be a deflection, it could be a breakaway. But then the second and third part of the call, I had sort of thought about the golden goal for the United States. And then I wanted to include, the fact that it was the anniversary of the miracle goal. Mm-hmm. Michael Ruzioni was in the building and some of the others. So I felt it was important for that to be part of the call. So the third part was, for the first time since the miracle in 1980, the United States takes the gold. So it was sort of a three-part call, and I had thought of parts 2 and 3 if the U.S. had won, but no clue what the first part of it would be because you just don't know what kind of goal would be scored. And here's the sheet from that game as well. So,
oh my gosh, that's worth millions. Keep that, hide that right there.
I have this one and the women's game here, and I didn't want to discriminate against the family and favor anybody. So, I found a Brady goal from his rookie season, Rangers, Ottawa, April 3rd, 2019. And how about this one? This is 30 years ago this month. And I remember this game so well. It was when Fox Sports had the NHL, and I worked a Winnipeg-Detroit playoff game. It was the last series in Winnipeg before they moved. And wouldn't you know it, I pulled this out at 1:30 in the morning last night when I got home from Philadelphia. I'm an organized hoarder. I have a file cabinet here with all these sheets. So the first goal of this game, I'm calling it on TV with the great Mickey Redmond. Keith Tkachuk, assisted by Craig Janney and my partner, Eddie Olczyk.
Wow, that is unbelievable right there.
That was the first goal of the game, if you can see it there. Winnipeg to
30 years
April
ago.
21st, 96. And then Eddie scores a goal, assisted by your dad, in the third period to give the Jets a 3-1 lead.
Wow. Unbelievable. They had some good chem. That's what my dad says. Eddie, one of the best guys he ever played with. And they still, you and Eddie, like you guys work so well together. And even seeing you guys like before the games. I mean, this is from my perspective and the players' perspective. You guys are always so amazing. Before games, we love talking, but it is always great. Eddie always asks about my dad, how he's doing. I'm like, he's here tonight. He ain't missing this one again.
Eddie has said this on the air. He gave him the nickname, right?
He did. So you can confirm that since you said it many times with around you. But Eddie O gave my dad the nickname Big Walt.
I mean, so many hockey players have nicknames based on either their dad or a player who had the same name, even with no relation, right? And Walter Tkachuk played for the Rangers here in New York, and thanks to Eddie, your dad became Big Walt.
Yep, that's a legendary, and now he's Biggie to his grandchildren. The nickname is now Biggie for all of our kids. But so since Brady's not here, we were going to have to definitely pass that along to him today. Hopefully, he played half decent that game, not just got a goal there. But one thing I wanted to ask you, not to jump around a little bit on the Olympic front, but how have you seen U.S. Canada, especially? We have basically all the listeners are American or Canadian. And then even putting that into like the NHL now in the rivalries you've seen, but how have you seen US Canada grow to where it is now from when you first started calling? And then just the NHL in general, your Pittsburgh and Flyers. Have you seen these rivalries start to like gain a little bit more traction now? Yeah, absolutely. The Penguins and Flyers, for example, this was their 8th playoff series, but it was the first one in a while. So that Battle of Pennsylvania, you could just feel the intensity. I grew up in the New York area and actually on Long Island. I live in New Jersey now, but the Rangers-Islanders rivalry back in the late 70s, early 80s, that was tremendous. The Rangers had a big rivalry with the Flyers, and then the Devils came in 82, and I know you've experienced Calgary, Edmonton, obviously, and Panthers, Lightning. But as far as the USA, Canada, I think back to when I was young. I was 12 years old when it was the U.S. and Russia in the Olympics in 1980, and then the U.S. had to beat Finland in that last game. But the NHL players weren't there, so most of the U.S. Canada rivalry stuff was in the NHL, and the Montreal Canadiens were winning all those cups in the 70s. They won 4 in a row,
And it was a great time to grow up as a hockey fan, because watching games on TV and going to games here in New York, you had the Canadiens dynasty, and they played the Rangers in the final in '79. And my longtime partner on Rangers broadcast, Dave Maloney, was the Rangers captain in that series. I've heard a lot of the stories from that '79 team. They actually won the first game in Montreal, and the Canadiens came back and won the next 4. And then the Islanders had their dynasty. Believe it or not, for some reason, I was a Vancouver Canucks fan as a kid living in New York.
It's crazy.
So,
couldn't be a further team.
And the Rangers also, I had 2 favorites, but was not an Islander fan, although I've gotten to know a lot of those guys and worked with many of them, and they're all great guys that played on those teams. But they were just unbelievable to watch. They won 19 straight playoff series. And then, they kind of passed the torch to Edmonton. They beat Edmonton in '83. So that was a U.S.-Canada, Stanley Cup final. And then, the tides turned the next year when Edmonton took over and beat the Islanders. And I've heard Wayne Gretzky, who's become a colleague on TNT, and I know you know him well, and I've heard him tell the story so many times about the Edmonton players in '83 when they lost to the Islanders, and it was the Islanders' 4th straight cup. And they walked past the Islander locker room at some point, and they were shocked that they weren't really celebrating. It was more ice bags and, they were just toast, coming through the 19 straight series in 4 years. And, Wayne and some of those Edmonton players, Paul Coffey's talked about it as well, just what they learned from the Islanders, what they had to go through those 19 series, and walking past their locker room and seeing the exhaustion and the ice bags, et cetera. And then Edmonton takes over and they win 4 in 5 years. So, you kind of had this U.S.-Canada thing back then in the NHL, with Montreal winning 4 in a row, the Islanders winning 4 in a row, and then Edmonton 4 out of 5 and 5 in 7 years. But to get back to Eddie Olczyk for a second, we've talked a lot with Eddie about his experience at the Olympics in 1984. They were the first Olympic team after the miracle for the United States, and they finished 7th. They had so many great players on that team. Pat LaFontaine, Chris Chelios. Eddie was tied with Pat for the team lead in points during those Olympics in Sarajevo. But he's talked about, both on and off the air, the pressure they felt to try and live up to what the 1980 team did. And they finished 7th in that Olympics. And then he was a part of some of those Canada Cups. They used to have Canada Cups in September prior to the season, the best of the best in '84, '87, and '91. And, those Canadian teams had Gretzky, Lemieux, Messier, all the all-time greats. So listening to his stories, and when we came on the air prior to your gold medal game in Milan, that was what he talked about. And he was emotional. He had tears in his eyes talking about how much the U.S.-Canada rivalry meant to the U.S. players that had come before you guys here in 2026. Yeah. And he talked about '84 and how they lost and how the U.S. hadn't won since at the Olympics. They did win at the 1996, the World Cup of hockey, but it meant a lot to those guys.
We made sure too that, like, for us, the biggest part about that game, that whole, honestly, not just that game, but everything leading up to it, the whole Olympics, was we're playing for the guys that have come before us. We want to obviously set the tone for the next generation and grow the next generation of U.S. hockey players. But this is more for the guys that came before us that paved this way.
And I know you guys, had Zoom calls with Chris Chelios and some of the others, but I could tell you, at least from Eddie, who was next to me, how much it meant to him as a guy who had represented the U.S. at the Olympics.
That's amazing. Well, we appreciate that. And obviously Eddie he knows how much he means to myself, my dad, the whole family. So he is the best. But I kind of want to turn this into like you've worked a ton of playoff games. You've worked a ton of you've worked a lot of Stanley Cup games, everything. And I just want to help show the viewer, and I think you could maybe help me with this, other than the beards growing. And for everybody that's listening to this or that's going to be listening to this, before every game, Kenny, Eddie, the whole group of guys, the whole broadcasting team comes down towards the locker room, just outside of the locker room, and, hangs out, asks questions. You guys normally talk to the coaches, right? And maybe some players. So I just want, if there's any way you can explain how players, coaches, everybody around the locker room looks, acts, feels for game 1 of the first round versus game 6 or 7 of the Stanley Cup final 2 months later. Like, can you notice the change in soreness, tired body, body language? Like, do you notice that stuff, or can you notice it?
Yeah, I think a little bit. We go through our preparation, whether it's a regular season game, a playoff game, it's pretty much similar. We'll go to the morning skates in the morning, and we have the opportunity to go in the locker room. Yesterday, for example, I was in the Penguins locker room, Flyers locker room, just listening to players talk. And, you might ask a question or two. And then we do get private time with the coaches. So yesterday it was with Rick Tocchet and Dan Muse.
The best.
Yeah,
Talk.
Great guys. Talk, again, he was part of our TNT studio crew, so we got to spend some time around him. And he's done, you look at what he's done in Vancouver 2 years ago, Coach of the Year, Jack Adams Trophy, and now in Philly, his first year, getting to the second round. But, come final time, there's so many more people around. So you don't necessarily get as much of the private time because it's more of a press conference setting. Yes, we'll go in the locker rooms, but there might be 30 people around a given player. So in the Stanley Cup final, they set up these press conferences where you listen to the coaches and some of the players, and then we'll get our private time with the coaches as well. But I remember we've done a lot of your games, the conference final against Carolina twice, and the 2 cup finals, and I'll have to say, your team, from the top right on down. Tremendous organization, and your PR staff, is one of my favorites. They do an excellent job, and
they're the best. They're amazing.
Being around you guys, your team, calling those games. But no, you could tell. I mean, obviously, as the series move on, as the stakes get higher, it's always amazing to us after the season ends when we hear about when the laundry list of injuries is finally talked about. And it's unbelievable what you guys go through. I mean, I remember, and I know it's a series, you don't necessarily want to reminisce too much about, but I have no idea how you played in that Vegas game. That was just incredible with some of the stuff you were going through.
Yep. Try not to think about it too much, but I was only allowed. I gave everything I can and did everything that I was allowed to do to play one game. I was only allowed to do one of those. So we just try to leave it all.
We joke about it in some of the other sports when you see a player miss a game or two or a week. We always reference a hockey player never would have missed that game. So.
Yeah, no, that's why the other sports like the load management and some of the stuff. I always think about that game as well when it comes to that. But okay, we got a few rapid fire broadcasting questions for you, and then Quater's going to come in, do a final one, and then I'm going to do a final. Okay, how has it changed broadcasting, or how has the game changed when it comes to like the actual on ice stuff, in your opinion, from your bird's eye view, from 30 years ago to right now? What's the number one main thing?
I feel like it's gotten a lot faster. You guys are bigger, stronger, faster, but the technology, when you look at all the video stuff with replay, when that came in 15, 20 years ago, I think that's been a big part of it. Even from a broadcast standpoint, there are so many more cameras, the technology, the HD TV. There are just so many more better looks at replays. And, there have been some goals scored or non-goals in the playoffs. There was one earlier in the round where it was the Ottawa-Carolina series, right, where it looked like the tying goal was scored and Anderson made the save, right? It was right up against the post. And from one look, it looked like it was in, and from the other look, it wasn't. So I think the technology is the main thing from a broadcast standpoint. Gotcha.
I love that. That's crazy. I guess it makes sense, but for us, you never
there
really
are just so many more cameras around. I mean, even to go to another sport, if you watch a football game, when I started with Fox back in 1994, on a typical Sunday afternoon game, we may have had 6 cameras. Now you watch a playoff game, there are 50. So, and that actually helps out as far as replays and challenges, because there are just more looks at every play and every potential goal, potential offside. I mean, that's one that came in. I worked the game. It was a Montreal-Tampa Bay playoff game in 2014 or 15. where Brian Boyle, who's now a partner of mine on some Rangers games, he's coming out of the zone. Tampa's teammates are entering the zone, and it led to a Kucherov goal in double overtime. That's the play they used as the example when they put in the offside challenge rule the next year. So close. Wow. And that was the one. So I actually worked that game, the play that led to the offside challenge rule.
Other than it being a little bit slower in the games now with all the reviews and stuff, I still think it's got the reviews got to be in there. We talked about it last week on the pod. It's got to be.
You want to get it right. You want to get it right.
Exactly. Okay, so you've grown up and been around the game for years and years and years around broadcasting, but there has to be one specific moment where you're like, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life.
Wow. I was real fortunate, and I'm sure we can compare stories, but to grow up in a sportscasting family with my father and two uncles who were longtime broadcasters, really from the time when I was 5 or 6 years old, it's really all I ever wanted to do. I got a tape recorder for my birthday from my parents, and I would sit in my bedroom and call games off the TV and make up games and just call them into a tape recorder. But, as time moved on and in high school, I received an unbelievable opportunity when a small cable station showed up at my school to film a girls' basketball game, and I volunteered to be the announcer and worked several 75 to 100, I would say, games for this station through the years. But when I think back, and hockey on the radio, that was my goal. That was what I wanted to do throughout the high school and college years. I love the other sports, and I've been so fortunate to be involved in so many of them, but hockey was the goal. My first professional job was calling the Baltimore Skipjacks in the American Hockey League, and those were 2 years I would never trade in for anything. Riding the buses, 10 hours up to Portland, Maine, and I was there from 1990 to 92. And believe it or not, my road roommate was Barry Trotz. He was our assistant coach.
Oh my gosh!
And they stuck the radio guy and the assistant coach in a hotel room together on the road to save money. So I learned so much from Trotz. Joel Quenneville was on our team for about 40 games. He was towards the end of his career.
What was the team name again?
Baltimore Skipjacks.
Skipjacks. That is an iconic. That's a top 5 name ever.
Affiliate. And from Barry Trotz to Joel Quenneville, we had Keith Jones. I mentioned was on our team for a little while.
Oh my gosh!
We had Ole Kolzig and Byron Defoe in goal. We had a number of players that went on to play in the NHL. Steve Konowalchuk, Tim Taylor, who works in the front office with Lewis.
Yeah.
Many others. Alfie Turcotte, whose son Alex is in the league. Alfie played for the Skipjacks. He was one of the leading scorers. So
that is so
funny. Those 2 years, you guys, players, always talk about the locker room, the camaraderie. I felt like I was part of it because it was just the coaches, the trainers, the players, and me on those bus rides. So, again,
love it.
We were all working towards the same goal. They wanted to get to the NHL. I wanted to get there as a broadcaster. So I think back to those 2 years so often. It was just so much fun and a great learning experience.
You could have given me a million guesses. I would have never been able to pinpoint the Baltimore Skipjacks, making you realize that's what you want to do. That is legendary.
Viewers, if you want to Google the fight song, they played this song every time the Skipjacks scored, and they once scored 9 goals in one period against the Hershey Bears, and it was just on a loop for the entire period. But so much fun, great memories.
And then final for the broadcasting, the quick ones here. Number 1 favorite call you've ever made?
That's a question I get all the time. And up until February, I would talk about the Bautista home run and bat flip back in.
I knew that was going to come up.
The Ovechkin record-breaking goal last year with our TNT crew. We were lucky enough to be on that game. The 3 Stanley Cups, including yours last year, obviously, those Stanley Cup winning calls. In football, there are too many, so many memories, a lot of single plays, not necessarily games, but I had the crazy lateral play with the Patriots and Raiders about 5 years ago. Chandler Jones at the end of the game intercepts the lateral and runs it back for a touchdown. I had Terrell Owens stomping on the Cowboys star.
Wow.
You might be a little young to remember that one, but
No, I see the video like once a week. I feel like
I had Victor Cruz, Eli Manning, 99-yard touchdown pass with the Giants leading, during one of their Super Bowl runs. A great playoff game between the Saints and 49ers in 2012. There were 4 touchdowns in the last 4 minutes.
Vernon Davis, right?
Davis, absolutely. It was that game. Yeah. Vernon Davis.
I got a good memory too, Kenny. I can remember that. I remember those
absolutely.
games.
And then,
well, my favorite of yours is just not even close, but in February this year, that was
those 3 games I talked about, but in particular the gold medal winning game. Those shoot up to the top of the list. The Quinn Hughes overtime goal, the Megan Keller, Jack Hughes. We talked about this when I saw you in New York. The Olympics, for you guys, grueling, 9:00 games every night. You don't go to sleep until 4 a.m, right? Almost all of your games are at 9 p.m.
Yeah.
I wound up working 24 games in 17 days, 7 doubleheaders. I think it was 17 different teams, but those games, the gold medal game, that's right up there at the top for sure. I want to throw out a couple more close to your heart. 2010 Mets Cardinals. I'm working with the great Tim McCarver in St. Louis. 20 innings, 20 game.
Wow.
So that one, along with your 4 overtime game, those are the 2 longest I've worked. I never left the booth to go to the men's room. I never felt the urge. Never had to go. You never think the game's going to go that long, right?
And that's back in the no pitch clock either. That could have gone on
baseball,
for
you don't
days.
have intermissions. It's only 2 minutes between innings, so you don't have a lot of time. And we grabbed dinner at Mike Shannon's after the game that night. Never forget that day.
Oh my gosh, that's hilarious.
And I've told you the story. The 2008 baseball All-Star game at Yankee Stadium. I'm not working. I'm with my wife in the stands. And sure enough, your parents come in and sit right next to us. I had gotten the tickets from Fox, and apparently your parents won the tickets. Joe Buck had donated them in an auction, so they were Fox seats. And we were sitting right next to them, and I remember them telling us, yeah, our kids are back at the hotel with a babysitter. And the game went 15 innings.
And that's 15 beers for the big man.
I think
at least
they left a little bit early to get back to the hotel, but that's probably the first time I heard about you guys, when you were back at the hotel during that baseball All-Star game.
That is hysterical. Well, I just wanted to let you know that before Quater asked the final, not the final, but the final question. I've watched your call on our gold medal win no less than, it's once a day at least. So thank you for that. And we're connected and linked forever with that legendary call.
Well, Matthew, really appreciate it. It's been an honor to come on with you, have watched your entire career, and congratulations on everything. 2 cups and a gold medal is just, I'm sure you couldn't have ever dreamed that as a kid growing up. And, again, to be honest about, the gold medal, the overtime calls, if those games are 4-1 or 5-1, nobody remembers the calls, right? But the fact that they went to overtime. So thanks to Mika Zibanejad for sending the Sweden game to overtime. Thanks to you guys for getting to overtime in the gold medal game, because, again, if it's a blowout, nobody really remembers the call. So,
Well, we got to thank Helly again. Thanks, Helly, for getting that to overtime. Quater, you got a quick one here, Quater?
The one thing I think, Kenny, so this came out, like the first round has been like one of the most, which is the second most playoffs on record. So the viewership is growing. And I think everyone knows that answer, but I kind of want to why. Do you think this viewership correlates with the Olympics and the NHL players getting to go play back over again? And like, how important is that international play to allow people to really understand playoff hockey?
Well, absolutely. I think the Olympics are a big part of it. The momentum that has carried over since February. I think streaming also probably has something to do with it. There are more ways for people to watch the games. You don't have to be sitting in front of a television. You can watch on your phone, on your iPad, on your computer, on the move. I remember, I think back to 1980 when I was 12 years old and I was playing hockey at a local rink on Long Island. And in the weeks and months after the U.S. beat Russia and then won the gold medal, it felt like 3 or 4 times the amount of kids started coming out to play hockey. So I think it's a similar situation here. We had 26 million people watching that men's gold medal game. in Milan. And it's funny, I remember talking to Quinn Hughes after a practice early in the Olympics. It may have been before the first game. And I was there with Catherine Tappan, and he was asking us, how many people do you think watch these games? And, we were explaining the numbers. His question had to do with versus an NHL regular season or playoff game. He was just curious what the ratio would be. And, then somebody mentioned, well, it's not going to be what a Super Bowl gets because that's about 140 million. But, when you look at a regular season game, and then it certainly ramps up in the playoffs. And, I think the Stanley Cup final, the last, 5-6 years with some of the exciting series that we've had on two different networks, TNT, ESPN, I think that has certainly led to increased viewership as well. What Matthew and his team has done down in Florida, what the Tampa Bay Lightning did before that, getting to 3 straight finals, and then Florida going to 3 straight and winning twice. But I personally do think the Olympics have a big, have certainly had a big part in the ratings increase, and hopefully it continues throughout the playoffs. And I think, there's been so much debate about the playoff system. Should it go back to the 1 versus 8? I mean, I remember when it was 1 versus 16 in the first round for a couple of years. I think there is something to those rivalries in the first round from a TV standpoint. On the other hand, would you rather have, a Dallas or Minnesota not eliminated in the first round? That's one way to look at it. Montreal having to play Tampa Bay in the first round. But I think those rivalries are a big part of what we've seen with the TV ratings.
Hey, if you want to win, you got to beat the best at some
You'll
point.
have to play at some point, right?
All right, Kenny, we got our final question for you. We have the best segment in podcast history. We call it Wingman of the Week. Wingman Pod, Wingman of the Week. So we always go through each week, and it could be something that somebody did nice for you that week. It could be somebody that's played a huge part in your early years. It could be Eddie O. We've given him a lot, so maybe I'll say you have to say somebody other than Eddie O. But who is your Wingman of the Week? Could be anybody that's helped you at any point of your career or life in general.
Wow, that's a great question. I think if we're just talking about this week, I'll have to get.
Could be whatever. Your wingman of your life, whatever you want.
Wow. I mean, so many people. Obviously, you're going to start with family members. Talked about my parents and giving me that tape recorder when I was 5-6 years old. My wife, my kids. My wife understands my schedule better than anybody. When I'm crisscrossing the country and getting back at 2 a.m. Last week, there was a day when I got home from Philly, probably 1:30 in the morning, went to sleep. She left at 8 a.m. the next day. I was still sleeping. And then I left for 3 days. We were in the same house in the same bed for about 6 hours, but we saw each other while awake. So, and then, my 2 girls, 26 and 23 now. I'll have to give it to my family, my wife and kids. Wingman of the Week for sure.
That's awesome. They're gonna love it. I'm gonna consider the Baltimore. What is it? I forgot it already.
You know what? I'll throw in.
I gotta throw in them too because I just love that name so freaking much.
Barry Trotz, honorable mention. Wingman.
That's awesome. That is awesome. Well, Kenny, thank you so much for doing this. Good luck. The rest of the playoffs we'll be watching, and it just better be me playing in them next year.
I hope so. Thanks, Matthew. Really appreciate it. Again, an honor, and I've really loved watching your career, and can't wait to see you back on the ice next year and get some sleep. Good luck with the baby.
No kidding. Thank you, Kenny.
Thanks, guys.
If you're still pounding energy drinks or even using nicotine just to feel awake, you've got to try Whip. It's a caffeine pouch, no nicotine, no sugar, no calories. You can just pop one in and get a natural, steady boost. No sugar crash, no giant can, no liquid, spills, or carbonation. They've got 100 milligrams and 200 milligram options. So it's basically your coffee or energy drink in a tiny pouch, and it tastes unreal. Plus, it's cheaper per serving than what you're probably grabbing now. Head to whip.com and use Wingman15 for 15% off your order. That's Wingman15 for 15% off your order.
Well, I hope everyone enjoyed the Kenny Albert interview. Awesome guest, awesome
legit
time.
The GOAT, like legit the GOAT.
So before we get into Wingman of the Week, Matthew, we're gonna ask you a question of why is it so hard to close out a playoff series?
Oh, it's got a little fan question. Maybe I had a fan question in a while. First of all, I want to say Kenny, literally, he's the best. Like that was awesome. He's unreal. I mean, his voice, it's like.
I want to see that. I want to see that file cabinet of all those play-by-play things.
Oh my gosh! Imagine some of those that's a lot of money that he just showed us in some of the like the gold medal game file. Are you kidding me? That's unreal. That's so cool of him to like show us that and like talk about it. That's the best. But okay, so why was it so hard to close out a playoff series? Can we talk about? Let's go scenarios here. Let's go exact examples of this. So. The hardest game, if you're up 3-0, the hardest game for both teams to win is that game 4. It's hard for the team that's down because you have zero momentum on your side and you have probably nothing's gone your way. Nothing has gone anybody's way on your team that whole first 3 games. And then if you're the other team, so let's just use like Pittsburgh, Philly, for example. So Philly, like everything, they're playing out of their minds so well. Everything's going right. Pittsburgh, the exact opposite. And they just get a little momentum in that game 4 and they grind it out. Well, now they're going back home. And now all they have to do is win 1 game at home for the pressure to start to shift a little bit. When you're up 3-0, you can't help but, or when you're up 3-1 even, you can't really help but think a little bit in advance. And it's so hard. And it's what our team learned so much through that series, especially against Edmonton, even going back the year before playing Boston, when we were down 3-1, you cannot look ahead. You cannot start watching the other games, thinking who you're going to play. Like you've got to focus on winning 1 game, 1 shift, 1 period, like laser focus. But I think it's really hard for teams to close out series just because you're getting, and this is the easy answer, but you're just getting the kitchen sink thrown at you. You're getting everybody's best on the other team. You're getting everything, literally everything they have. What are you going to save it for? Camp's not for 4 or 5 months. So it is everything thrown at you. Like I said, the kitchen sink thrown at you, but a lot of it is how you deal with pressure, how teams deal with pressure. So I just want to use us against Edmonton, for example. So we're playing really well at Edmonton. We're up 3-0. Edmonton, it was up to us to come out of the gates hot while we've got all the momentum and really take that game 4 in the first 5 minutes. Well, it was the opposite. We had a power play. It was our chance to do it. They get a shorthanded goal and then they start coming a little bit. Anyways, that game ends like 8 or 9-1. We go back home and we're like, okay, like we're feeling good. Like we're up 3-1 in the Stanley Cup final. Like, let's fucking go. Like we're at home. Here we go. We're playing well. We played probably one of our best games of that series. But in playoffs, when you're playing a team in the finals, they have the goalie that could steal a game. They got the players that could steal a game. And I remember McDavid and Skinner both played unbelievable. So they win that game. Now all of a sudden we're on a 6-hour flight back to Edmonton for game 6. And now we're like, okay. Like I remember before that game 4 and game 6, I was like feeling a little bit more pressure than I've ever felt in my life. So we lose that game. And I remember right after that game, maybe the next morning, it just shifted the pressure because now Edmonton has a chance to win the Stanley Cup. They've got all their family coming down. They've got planes of extra people. And now the whole, seems like all of Edmonton's trying to get down there for that game. Family, you're worried about that. You got the tickets, just everything. So now they're feeling the pressure of the Cup's in the building. It's been in the building for us the last 3 games, but now you're starting to feel it. So, and I think that's the same way with round 1, really. Like you have a chance. You have a chance to advance on this game, but all it takes is the other team to steal one. And then, wow, they might have a chance now. So it really is it's the 4th win is the hardest one to win. And I know this is such a cliche answer, but the best way to give yourself the best advantage of winning that final game is getting the first goal. Get the first goal, come out hotter than the other team and get that first goal and then just ride that as long as you can. But I loved that Pittsburgh-Philly game last night. Like for Philly to win, it's that 1-0, like filthy, greasy,
gritty.
Just take away as much as you can. You're not going to take away all those guys' chances, but you can try to limit it as much as you can. Try to capitalize on the turnovers. But I'm impressed with the way Philly plays. They work really hard. They play smart. They play heavy for their size. They're not the biggest team, but they've got guys that play that way, and just a gritty, greasy win. Very impressed with their team and winning that one. But as you saw, like, they have game 4 at home. They don't win it. They go for game 5. That's a grind of a game. And they were right there, a weird bounce for the third goal for Pittsburgh. And now all of a sudden you're back home and you're like, we got to win this. Otherwise we're back on the road. And I still think if they would have went back on the road, they had a good chance. Just they're playing solid and having good goaltending. But wow, playoffs, you don't get anything for winning 3 games. You could win, what is it? Yeah, you could win obviously 15 games and not win the cup, which is insane. And, each series, like, you have a chance to lose. You could lose 12 games and win the cup. Like, it's a crazy, crazy sport. The playoffs are the best. I remember Daryl Sutter saying something to me when he was the coach of the team. Your winning percentage in the regular season has to be way better than your winning percentage in the playoffs, even if that's winning the cup. So when we got to playoffs, it was almost like what he said worked for us. He's like, boys, we don't have to win like 3 out of 5 now. We just have to win 4 out of 7. Like, the percentage is different. And I remember that's always been with me, like, in playoffs now. It's like, it's okay to, like, win one, lose one, win one, lose one, win one, lose one. You still got that game 7. So just got to win it. So, like, all you have to do is just keep staying in the fight.
Yeah, and I think maybe you definitely saw that with Buffalo game 5, like the amount of pressure. The city comes, Ryan Whitney comes. Did you see the chug? Did you see the chug heard around the world?
I did. I was watching the game. Yeah, I mean, I don't know, but maybe it was hard because he was on rollerblades. Or I'm sticking up for him a little bit. If he was on rollerblades, he wasn't on blades. I mean, and that's probably not as, not what you dream about, but it's nice to see him up there supporting the team. I saw you said that when I was on with them last week or 2 weeks ago. He was saying how his kind of got his tail between his legs by saying they weren't going to make playoffs, and then they made it. So it's good to see his support there. But yeah, that's, I mean, I'm a good, what do they call it? Boat racing, where you chug the beer and put it down and then flip cups. So those are 2 of my specialty games, my drinking and drink racing games. So probably not something I should pride myself on too much, but I don't know how he did it so slow. I mean, I feel like he should be a lot quicker with that, but he's an unreal guy. Hopefully he gets a chance at redemption. Hopefully that they can win this round and bring him back for a chance of redemption next round. But I really do not care who wins that series. Got buddies on both sides. I'm kind of rooting for just overtime hockey. I think a lot of people ask me who I want to win in playoffs without being in. I'm like, well, really, like, I've got friends on most teams, so it's like really hard to say. I know a couple teams I don't want to win, but everybody has those too. But yeah, I think I'm just rooting for overtime hockey each and every night. Maybe not in the late games. I don't want to stay up till 2 a.m. Like, I didn't stay up for the overtime last night of Vegas and Utah. I couldn't. I had toast.
one eye open. I had one eye open on the couch. I was struggling.
I was like, I almost didn't want them to score at the end, just because I'm like, no, I got to check my phone bright and early to see who scored. But yeah, I think you can really feel it as the rounds go. So to me, the hardest 2 rounds are the first round and then the finals. And then I don't know why it is. I think the first round is just, somebody called it once the Wild Wild West, and that's such a great like analogy for it. And then the finals, like, you're just so close to your dream that, like, on and off, on the ice, away from the rink, like, that's all you're thinking about. And then the other 2 rounds, you just got to play good. So it's I don't know. It's playoff hockey is the best. Just every time we talk about it, which is every episode, in my head, I'm like, fuck, why aren't you in playoffs right now? So we'll get back there next year.
We will indeed. Well, it's our favorite segment, the best segment
in podcast history.
And your wingman of the week, who is it?
So I have 2 this week. One's a group of people, and 2 is a food item. So one, first and foremost, the main wingman of the week, and it's a wing group of the week, is and Kenny brought it up actually, and it's so funny that he brought it up, and then I'm saying it for my wing group of the week. But he brought up the PR team in Florida and how great they're and how they're one of, if not his favorites to work with. And they are just unbelievable people, and then such a great group led by Addie and Sheriff and just everybody. So they are my wing group of people of the week. There's many of them, and they're all helping each other out and helping us out, and just making it such an easy place, but still doing what we have to do as professional athletes. So they've protected me and taken care of me for 4 years now, and just continue to be the best. So shout out to them. And then I don't know what's wing food of the week. We'll just call it Wingman of the week here. Another one. A beef carpaccio sandwich from Buchan in West Palm and in Palm Beach. It is.
What is that? What is it? That sounds unbelievable.
It is. It's a top 3 food item on the planet. Actually.
Wow.
And it's a very famous joint down here in South Florida. And I will be spending a lot of time in West Palm over the next couple of weeks, which means for probably a lot of sandwiches from there. So I had to give that a shout out. It's all I've really been thinking about since knowing I'll be up in West Palm the next little bit. It's kind of plan my day around how do I pick up a Buchan beef carpaccio sandwich on the way back to Lottie. So shout out them. Shout out the PR staff in Florida. I had to go two Wingmen of the week. I had to, and looking forward to spending more time up there for that sandwich, for that Sandy. Well, that wraps up our episode of Wingman. Check out episodes every week. Watch and subscribe on YouTube to the Wingman channel and listen wherever you get your podcasts.